Hello everyone. So I did a video just before um kind of saying like my farewell to public tarot and astrology. But in that video I did mention that I wanted to do some videos on my favorite books that I've used for my spiritual journey and my spiritual growth and everything. So because I've referenced them all the time and I still buy them because this is still like my personal practice. So today I wanted to go over my favorite astrology books. And I have a lot. It was very hard for me to look through the books that I have and pick just some because I have so many. So this is really my narrow down of like books that I use the most when I'm either referencing something to do with astrology or when I was writing out like content when I was in my Patreon community talking about the planets and things like that and the educational stuff. So these are the main books that I would reference, and there's also some additional ones that I just found were very I don't know, I just really enjoyed the astrology. So let's jump into it with the first book. This one is I'd say it's a little bit outdated. Well, it's probably a lot outdated with certain things, but the reason why it's in my list is one, because it's the very first astrology book that I ever had. It was actually gifted to me by someone, by one of my mum's friends when I was a little kid, because they knew I loved astrology. And it's actually one that I still reference to this day. And this is one that I would say is really good for understanding just the astrological signs in general. That's what I usually use it for, and things that come into association with each astrological sign, and that is Parker's Astrology. I do believe they have an updated version now. I want to say they do, so I don't think it looks like this anymore. Like this is like, I don't even know when this one was published. 1991. So it's very old. But the basics, like I said, like this is a big book, but the reason why I loved it, it has a lot of information in here for like progressions and transits and things like that, which is actually really good, and like aspects and things. I don't reference that as much. It's actually the astrological stuff, the star signs that I reference. So for example, Capricorn, my rising sign, that's what I opened it to. You can see like it has a write-up of what Capricorn energy is in terms of personality, career, family, partnerships, that kind of thing. But it has like a lot of really cool references for like associations, like the plants that are ruled by Capricorn, like even down to like crystals, trees, cities in the world, planets, animals, mythology and stuff. And then they also have like it continues on to like retirement, leisure, all that kind of stuff, as well as other things that are underneath the Capricorn energy or the star sign energy, like plants, foods, all that kind of stuff. So it's actually very it's a really quick, easy guide. That's one of the ones that I have referenced the most, for that kind of quick, easy guide to sort of get, you know, things that are ruled by a particular star sign, and to get basic concepts of the star signs. I would also say it's really good for like people who are starting out with astrology, because it's such a useful, I mean, like it's got in the back like the transits, aspects and things like that. So it's got a lot of good quality stuff. And I do believe not too long ago I saw that there was like an updated version of it. So this is like one of the most referenced books that I use. The next one is kind of in the same energy. Again, it's outdated to a slight degree, and the only reason why I say this is because I know it's more outdated on the scientific side of things when it's talking about the planets, because we obviously know more about space and astrology now, not astronomy, not astrology, but it is called It's ironic. The only astrology book you will ever need. It's a lie. You will always need more. Not because you have to get more, but because, you know, once you buy one, you're always going to get more. But I do reference this one a lot because this has not just like the star signs, it also has like love compatibilities, like stuff like, well, not compatibilities, but what a person's like in love. There's also like the breakdown of like the deacons, which they call them the deaconates, but the deacons in each sign, which is actually like more, I wouldn't say it's like advanced astrology, but it's far more interesting to understand. Like it also goes through like moon signs, it also goes through how to interpret charts, and it talks about the planets as well. So the planet aspect is what I probably reference the most in this book, because it's a nice little rundown of what the planet means kind of in mythology to a certain degree, but more so how the planet applies to astrology. And it also has the astronomical and astronomy components to it. Again, though, there is a few things that are a little bit outdated. So when I was looking at this and like looking at like certain scientific components when I did my educational stuff in Patreon talking about the planets themselves, when I was referencing this, I also made sure I checked online with the most updated information as well, just because I did notice there was a couple, they're not like major errors, but they're just slight things that we now have more sophisticated technology to be able to understand it more. So it's definitely one that I think is great. It also has the houses and when a planet is in a house, what that represents, what it means, those kind of things. So it has a lot of content in here. So it's, again, it's probably one, it does have the I can't even say the word right now. I'm gonna find the word because I can't speak. It does have like dates and everything. Actually has a lot of like where things are going to be in certain years and stuff like that, and the tables for it as well. So it's got a lot of content in here. So it's a really good one for, and this is more recent than Parker's Astrology. So definitely one that I would say is really good for beginners as well, because it just covers like bits of everything. Yeah, so it's probably one that I would say is, if you're only going to get like one or two, I would get them. Not the kind of ones like I've recently, well, not recently, but I got a lot of ones that you see on like in like Kmart and Target, because astrology has become so mainstream. You can buy so many books now in like, you know, your cheap department stores. Not to say that those ones aren't good, but they are very basic in terms of their explanations, and they don't go deeper into astrology as it actually is as a practice and as a almost like a science, because we have to remember astrology came before astronomy. It was like combined into the two. So proper astrology, you kind of want to get a real proper astrological book, not the stuff that you see like understanding your moon sign, understanding your sun sign, and things like that you see in department stores now, because you just aren't ever going to get enough. Don't get me wrong, I do have those books as well, and I do reference them, but I reference them in conjunction with a proper astrology book. So the next two you probably have seen before. This is actually specifically going into the moon. I'd be wrong to not mention this book. It's Moonology by Yasmin Boland. Very good book for, especially when you're beginning out with wanting to work with the moon phases and stuff. I still reference this book to this day, even though I would say it's very easy to understand. It's not basic. It's not a basic aspect. It goes into a lot of depth. My cat's up on the bookshelf on the top, and I can hear him moving around. it's just it's straightforward and simple, but it covers a lot. So if you're just starting out in understanding like working with the moon, and there's a lot to understand, this is a really good one because it actually goes over like other aspects that you don't usually see. Like usually we just get like moon sign stuff and that's it, and maybe like the basic moon phases, but she goes over like eclipses and full moons and super moons, and she does mention the nodes as well. Very, very important in astrology. So it's a really good one. And even if you are a seasoned astrologer, as I said, I still reference this book for quick references for energies when working with the moon energy as well. So it's definitely one that I would say is a good one to have on the shelf. And you can pick this one up in your department stores like Kmart and Big W and stuff like that, because it has become so mainstream. The next one is also a moon one. Probably the one I reference the most, ironically, and I bought this online, and it's a small book. See, tiny. It's nice, pocket size. It's a hardcover as well, which I do like in this, especially in this size, because it just feels a little bit safer. You can't really see the title, but it's called Be Your Own. Maybe you can a little bit. There you go. Be Your Own Moon Astrologer by Heather Rowan Robbins. I think I'm saying that correctly. And I reference this the absolute most with moon stuff. It is only the moon stuff. It doesn't go over into like heaps of details about like the nodes and things like that. But the reason why I reference this the most is because she talks about your moon sign, which is really good. There's a lot of detail and stuff in terms of challenges, different aspects in your life. But what I actually reference the most in this is not the moon sign component. It's the second component, which is navigating your day with the moon. So the moon changes signs every 2.5 days, roughly, give or take. So the moon is in a different astrological sign. I use this predominantly for like new moons and full moons, so I understand the energy a little bit more. And this is talking about when the moon is specifically in an astrological sign, not from a birth perspective, but from a daily perspective. And it has got a lot, even though it's only like a few pages, it's so detailed with what the energy is actually going to be like, what people can be like, what to expect, things to watch out for, things to be aware of, things to do during that time. Like it's really, really detailed. And then it has like a quick reference as well at the end. So I use this book all the time for that. It's actually always out like on my little table that I have here. I reference this all the time. And I used to reference it specifically all the time when I was writing out like new moon reports and full moon reports and things like that. So that would give me like my base to start with, and then I would do intuitive messages from that as well. The next one, probably, this is not necessarily one that everyone's going to like. I think those four books are my main like proper astrology books. These next three are kind of crossovers, and my absolute favorite astrology book has been this one, Mythic Astrology. And this is not an astrology book to understand Western astrology or basic astrology. This is an astrology book to understand the mythology and the psychology of what the planets represent. This book is, I love it. I love it so much. I wished I'd gotten it sooner. I only got this, I think I got it last year. And I bought this when I was deep diving into the correspondences between astrology and psychology, which is something that all of the famous psychologists of their time, like the grandfathers of psychology, like Freud and especially Carl Jung, and anyone who does like Jungian psychology will reference to a certain degree astrology from this perspective. So, and I do want to mention like an honorary mention to Carl Jung's books on, I actually don't know what it's called. Carl Jung has his own essay that he did on astrology, which is very interesting. From a psychological perspective, it was quite fascinating. And his daughter is actually an astrologer, and she did a write-up in that talked about her father's astrological chart and how that showed up in his life. It was very fascinating. I can't remember for the life of me the book, and I can't quick reference find it either. It's around here somewhere because I just chucked things back in my shelf when I moved them, and I don't know where everything is, but that's okay. We're just going to mention it. If you type in like Jung and astrology, it'll come up with his books. So yes, so this book is this is by Ariel Gutman and Kenneth Johnson. Ariel Gutman is, I've got a few of her other books as well. She's very well known for working with Venus and the Venus star point. That's her like flagship aspect, and also Mythic Astrology. So this is a book where this is working with like the planets and the astrological signs and how they show up in mythology first, what they meant in mythology, and where like we get the mythology from. And this is not just talking about like the Greek or Roman mythology, like it's actually Roman planets, Roman gods that the planets are named after. So it's not the Roman or just the Greek gods. We also reference like ancient Egypt and other mythological like Babylon and things like that. So it talks about the mythology behind it and what the planets represent and how that shows up in a psychological perspective within us as humans and what that planet represents in our psyche. It's deeply fascinating. It's deeply interesting to understand how these things work out. And it's so detailed. Like this is all still on Mars. Like it goes into a lot of detail and how that shows up. And this is not just your basic planets. Like we also have asteroids as well. Like we have the asteroid Ceres, for example. It doesn't do all the asteroids, but it does like some of the key ones, like Ceres, Pallas, or Pallas Athene, depending on how you want to reference it, and Juno specifically because they are more the feminine kind of qualities coming through. So yeah, it's definitely more advanced in terms of astrology, and it's very much a niche component to astrology, but it is absolutely fascinating. And we have in the second half we have the zodiac wheel. So this references the zodiac signs, and it also represents to a certain degree in some components. It talks about the houses as well, and the elements. We also go over the elements as well, and it again goes into the mythology and the stories behind where they got their name and why the planets and stuff are sort of named after that, and how it shows up from a deep psychological perspective. So this one is very much a favorite of mine in terms of my astrological practice. It revolutionized how I looked at astrology and how I practiced astrology. It like absolutely changed my world when it came to understanding astrology. So I can't not have this in here as a mention. It is amazing. Leading on from that, this one's probably again in that same kind of tone or same kind of energy, but from a more feminine perspective, and it's called The 12 Faces of the Goddess. This is a more newer one, but it's actually one when I flicked through, I was like, this is actually such a soft, beautiful way of looking at astrology. And it's not just astrology. It actually says on here, transform your life with astrology, magic, and the sacred feminine. So the key components for this, it does have like magical aspects and like rituals and things like that. But again, this kind of goes a little bit more on the individual star sign, specifically looking at women and females who are in astrology, who have an interest in astrology. So it does have that feminine kind of component, but it also talks about the goddesses that are represented by each star sign and how to work with them and what they actually represent. and sort of having like a ritual connected to it to connect to the goddess and to connect to that energy as well. Even just the information though is very detailed. It is a soft aspect. Like I said, it's very feminine, very flowy, very soft, but it is definitely one that, even though it's newer, and I kind of got this towards the end where I was starting to sort of drift away from deep practice with my astrology and stuff, it's still one that I wanted to mention because connecting in with like the mythic aspect, but coming from a very feminine perspective, this is perfect. And it's just such a, it's got that magic component into it. So especially for those who like to work with like witchcraft or paganism and that kind of thing, this is a really good book to connect into those elements. Finally, this book again crosses over. So this kind of crosses over, I suppose, into the next video that I'm going to do, which is my tarot books, my top tarot books. And this is Tarot and Astrology. Again, it's a more recent one, but I actually really loved the connection between the tarot cards and the astrological correspondences. It's a really good book to work with, to go deeper into your practice with the tarot and understanding how they connect and how the references actually tie in to astrology. Because tarot and astrology are like sisters. They go hand in hand together and they complement each other so well. So this is one of those books that I think is really good for people who are wanting to like advance their tarot practice and kind of delve into astrology, or for those who are maybe good with astrology but want to delve into tarot, or for people who do both and just kind of want to have more of a detailed connection between the two. And it goes through the entire tarot, and like here I just opened it up to the Six of Pentacles, which is representing the moon in Taurus. So, you know, it actually goes into like details about the card and the concept behind the card meaning and how it connects into astrology and how that astrological component kind of influences things. So it's like my last, I don't want to say honorary mention, but it's like my crossover. It's very simple. It's not too complicated and complex. It's simple enough to understand what you need to understand without overwhelming you and bombarding you with information. So on that note, I think I'm going to finish up. I think that's pretty much all I wanted to say with my astrological books and the top ones that I think should be mentioned. At this stage, I'm sure there'll be others in the future that I will bring in, or maybe things that I change out that I use more, and things like that, because I've got a lot of advanced astrology books as well. So these are more like beginner / intermediate, especially those last three. They're more the intermediate ones, but the others I'd say are very good for beginners. So yes, I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll catch you in the next video, which will probably be the tarot books that are my top tarot books. So I will see you in that one. Bye.